the creator of the Good Leadership Breakfast, 8 years running now. He is the CEO of Good Leadership Enterprises. He's an executive coach, an international speaker, a blogger, and an author with a new book coming out this fall called How Goodness Pays. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Paul Butts.
We spend a lot of time thinking about what do these pictures look like. It's important that we tell stories with people who are in the first half of their career and second half of their career, men and women, people who are in corporate world, people who are entrepreneurs, people who are working for the public good, and then people from all walks of life. And when we came across our speaker today, it was just one of those light bulb moments. Please give a good, warm welcome to Pahoua Hoffman.
I'm so grateful for this opportunity to speak here this morning, to stand here before you as an imposter. Well, not exactly, but I do stand here with self-doubt and just sometimes a little bit of imposter syndrome. I get it from my mother. Self-doubt has been a companion of mine in my life for a long time. A companion that could have stifled my career, but instead, I found it to be a good friend. In fact, I thought about titling this talk, The Goodness of Doubt. When people hear about me, or read my story, or find something about me, the thing they usually find most interesting is the very thing I have no memory of. Think about that. When you hear other people saying, oh, that Pahoua, you know what's really interesting about her? And the thing they say is the thing I can't recall. And the thing is that I was born in Laos on a secret American-run military base that officially never existed. And that my family soon moved to a refugee camp across the Mekong River in Thailand. I hear what that was like. That base was called Long Cheng, and that it was huge. And in fact, at its peak, it was the second largest city in Laos, yet it never appeared on any maps. My dad's job there was to drive a US military jeep as a type of taxi service. That's how large it was. My parents, they met on that base. When the US withdrew from the war and left Vietnam and Laos, they only took with them a few highly ranked military officials. Among my people, the Hmong. The Hmong had helped the CIA fight this secret war against the communists in Laos, and we fought alongside the Americans. General Vang Pao is a storied figure in our history. He and others got a plane ride out of Laos. My family, they didn't. Thousands of Hmong didn't. And with the war ending, the Lao government wasn't going to take too kindly to all these Hmong people who had helped the Americans. Thus, tens and thousands of refugees fled into camps in Thailand. One of my dad's friends, a good American whose name I don't know, went to my dad and said, here's 2 tanks of gas, keep the Jeep and get your family out of here. And that's how we got to Thailand, or so I'm told. I recall nothing of what I just told you. That's all based on my family's recollections to me. My own earliest memories start in Ohio, where we moved about a year in that refugee camp. We moved there because a good person named Louise Blankenship sponsored my family as relocated refugees to come live in the US. It was Miss Blankenship who often took me to kindergarten because my parents just didn't know how some of those basic things in daily American life worked, like taking your kids to school. I tell you all of this because it was here that our family friend, self-doubt, started hanging around. It almost doesn't seem a strong enough word to say that we, or any Hmong family, were displaced when we were brought here to this country. It's staggering for me to think about all the things that my parents did back then. They were in their 20s. They brought me here. They had 3 more children here in the US. They found a place to live without knowing the language or the support of other Hmong people. They learned English in part by watching public television, which is one reason I so very much wanted to work for Twin Cities PBS, which I did do later in life. They found jobs, and they passed big, scary exams like the citizenship test to be Americans. I'd like to see how some of you might do on that test. And through all of this, my mom never missed an opportunity to proclaim her inability to do something. She had done so much, but doubted she could do anything. My siblings and I protested, "What are you talking about? You own a business, you communicate with your customers in a country you very likely didn't know existed when you were little." Nonsense. I'm so stupid. Words I've actually heard my mother say about herself. I think she might have felt this way because there were parts of life where she didn't know how to help me. I fumbled my way through FAFSA forms, applying for college financial aid. I just told her where to sign. I took the ACT on the last possible day. The idea that I'd go to college at all was new in our family, and they had no idea how to help me navigate the most simplistic things you do when you want to go to college. But sorry, Mom, you're wrong. You're not stupid. And when this friend of ours, self-doubt, found itself firmly implanted in my mom, it went to work on me. I have never felt like I'm the smartest person in the room, ever. That started when I was in kindergarten, and really I wasn't the smartest person in the room because I didn't know English. I did eventually learn, and I even became a resource for my parents in helping translate. But those deep-rooted feelings I felt in those early grades continue to this day. I hated that doubt until I decided to make it my friend. My current job takes me to the state capitol a lot. I go into those rooms assuming others are smarter than me, but I sure do see people who pretend they know a lot of stuff. I'm always that person who asks the dumb questions. And guess what? They're not that dumb. That's because I usually find other people who want to ask the same thing. Listen more. Ask more questions. Someone who's much smarter than me once told me, "We can't learn and defend at the same time." If you're in a meeting where you have to defend your idea or the program you run, how much active listening are you really doing? Not a lot. You're on defense. Instead, I choose to spend more time learning, not defending. Quite honestly, I have a real suspicion of people who can't be vulnerable. I see it every day. People who are acting, performing. My read of people is usually right, and I quickly connect with people who are authentic and vulnerable. Gosh, don't we need more of those leaders today? Unfortunately, I worry our social media and attack dog world is just waiting to pounce on those people who are vulnerable. I'd really like to change that, but I can't fly to California and change Twitter. So I'm gonna focus on my own neighborhood. I think of what Booker T. Washington said. Cast down your bucket where you are. Cast down your bucket where you are. I hear all the time about people who want to do good and make meaningful impact, and they do so by paying thousands of dollars to travel to some place they feel is worse off to do good work. What about your own block where you live? Are you telling me your block is completely free of litter and that everyone recycles perfectly? And that people living next door to you are having zero difficulty raising their children? Are you telling me there isn't a single stray animal that needs a home? Or that absolutely no one in your apartment building is struggling to quit smoking, drinking, or using prescription painkillers in an abusive way? Are you telling me no one in your community lives alone and goes days without interacting with another person? Are you telling me there's no one around who struggles with depression or PTSD and is having suicidal thoughts? How many of you here are taking care of parents? Are you sitting down and having long conversations with them about how we as a state should take care of our older loved ones as they age? Have you talked to them about living wills and how your parents want to die their best selves? The most impact you have are in the spaces around you. If we're not having these conversations with our elders about aging or with our neighbors about how to help out here or there, or if we continue to walk past food wrappers on the ground without picking them up, what are we doing? Did Louise Blankenship from Ohio spend lots of money to travel to Thailand and pass out food and medicine in refugee camps? No. She cast down her bucket where she was, and she sponsored a family she had never met to live in a new land. The places that need the most help are right here in front of us. So I can't fix Twitter, but I can do in my career the work right in front of me. I now get to lead this amazing organization called the Citizens League, which brings people together to come up with ideas and solutions for some of our most challenging public policy issues. We've convened task forces of community members to talk about how the city of St. Paul might implement a different minimum wage, or how we as a region can operate and create a more accountable transit system, or how we as a state can better meet the needs of solos, our older adults, without children, friends, or spouses to help with care. And in each of those projects, I want so badly for people to join those groups who don't think they're good enough. People like Patty, who joined a committee a couple years ago to discuss transit in the metro. Patty is disabled and was the only person in the group who actually uses metro mobility, an important item when discussing transit. When I talked to her about having a paratransit rider on the committee, someone who has to plan out simple coffee meetings days and weeks in advance, because that's just how the service operates, she wasn't sure. She doubted herself. Look at all those important people on that committee, Pahoua. What would I bring? I told her if her voice wasn't on this committee, it would be a huge miss and a great loss for us. She finally said yes, And the only meetings Patty missed were the ones the very service we were talking about, mental mobility, failed her. And now, we can't stop her. She told me it was the first time she had used her voice in that way, and she feels she can't stop now. She has continued to advocate for her rights and the rights of others with disabilities, and she credits the Citizens League for elevating that voice. And Patty, you're here with me this morning, and I'm so glad that Metro Mobility didn't fail you this morning. Thank you for being here. There are countless people out there like Patty and like me. People who have self-doubt when they're walking into a room, but who have used that to our advantage. I guess what I'm trying to signal is that if I can do it, so can you. We see people who speak well on stages, and some of us see that as unapproachable. Part of how I'm casting my bucket where I am is to work to dispel that. Just because I'm standing up here now doesn't mean you won't be up here tomorrow. Let me end by clarifying one thing. While I never thought I'm better than anyone, I've always thought I could be just as good. And so can you, imposter or not. Thank you.
We had some really stimulating conversation at our table. We talked about the fact that one of the companies has a no-jerk rule in their organization. It's kind of a no-jerk rule, and we were starting to discuss how do you enforce that. So, more to come there. So Pahoua, the Citizens League, for most of us, if we're not active in politics, it's kind of a mystery. So can you give us just sort of the elementary school, what is the Citizens League and what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I've been starting to talk about the Citizens League as we put the people into the policy. And what I mean by that is often policies are developed and passed without really the intended audience in mind. I mean, how often do we see young people be a part of setting education policy?
That's a good example.
Yeah. And a good example of this is when we just concluded our minimum wage study committee. And the reason why we call it study committee is we actually do learn, we study. For the city of St. Paul, they asked us, they said, we're not sure what we might want to do around an ordinance around minimum wage. Help us. Help us convene community members that reflect some of the challenges and some of the opportunities around this conversation. And we convene low-wage workers, small business owners, private colleges, employers and employees. For 14 weeks, they are sitting at the same table, learning about how a decision might impact them or each other. And we came up with some recommendations. They're in the good hands now of the city council and the mayor's office, and they will decide what they will do as far as an ordinance. But that ordinance now, whatever happens, is going to be informed by the actual community members who live or work in St. Paul. And that's what I get to do.
That sounds fascinating.
It's great.
So what are some of the other sort of simple things that you're working on studying?
Well, we're doing a lot of work around aging, and you kind of heard me say a couple of those things in my talk. Aging is one of these issues that's going to bring about great challenges for our state and our country. And government can't solve these challenges alone. It's going to start with the conversations that we have at home. So that long conversation with your parents. So few people are having those right now. And just to learn what your parents want or don't want is going to help the state get prepared, because there's not going to be enough money in the state coffers to pay for everything that we will want and need. And starting first with what you want and what your parents want is one of those things that we endeavor to do, is make sure that people are having those conversations.
So project ahead then. How is what you're working on right now going to make our lives better 20 years from now?
my hope is that the policies that will stay in place will still be responsive to the community it's meant to serve. So I hope that the policies of the future will reflect our needs and will continue to reflect our needs.
Yeah, I'm so fascinated by it because the definition of stuck is when we get narrow and focused right here, and you're focused on all these big, huge things. I'm grateful you're doing that work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So always use a few more members.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. Your mom.
Yes.
She's like the central character in your story. What's your mom doing now?
My mom is, so first of all, my mom is 4'8", and I'm still afraid of her. Am I right? I mean,
Yeah.
she orders me around.
Okay.
So my mom has a small alteration shop on Nicollet Avenue. It's where I also live. So we see my mom a lot. In fact, my husband, who's here, sees my mom 7 days a week. Well, 6 days a week. Always checks up on her. So she runs her own little business. She sets her own hours. She works by herself. She has a huge following of customers who trust her work, who like her work, who come and visit her, and so she's never alone. And she's doing great.
That's awesome. She's living the American dream.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, okay, so when we got to know each other, you told me about adventure travel and things like that. So what was the last really cool trip you took? And then tell us maybe about when you're planning.
Well, the last trip I took, that was like a big trip, was in Italy in February. It's a location that I love to go back to anytime I can. We have friends who live there. I wouldn't call that one an adventure travel, but the one that I'm planning next with my friends who are here, we're planning to take a 5 or 7 day hiking trip through Iceland. So that's going to be an adventure.
That will be an adventure,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Well, we also share a love of music.
Yes.
You said you like to go to music festivals and see live jazz, so tell us about that.
Well, I live across from Ice House in south of Minneapolis, south of downtown Minneapolis, and there's always jazz on Monday nights. We like to go there. It's easy for me to just walk across the street and hear some jazz. But what I'm really excited about is my friend Angela bought us tickets to see Willie Nelson to ring in the new year, and I'm so excited.
Wow, Willie Nelson!
So excited, yeah.
Well, wonders never cease, huh?
So this will round out like my love of country music because we saw Dolly Parton together. Got a chance to see Loretta Lynn in the Grand Ole Opry before she had her stroke. That same weekend, we also saw Emmylou Harris and John Prine. So Willie Nelson.
Wow! Well, I know that in my family we bought like 20 tickets to see Elton John at his farewell tour in February. So yeah, that's our next big music adventure in our house. Well, I just want to ask you, I want to round this up by asking you about your own neighborhood. You said drop down your bucket where you live. Where do you see goodness around you in your neighborhood?
So in our neighborhood where I live in Whittier, so I live right by MCAD, Minneapolis Institute of Art. There are a number of halfway houses in our neighborhood. People who are coming out of recovery, this is where they transition. And so I see a lot of individuals who really need a supportive environment, a neighborhood, and I see that happening in my neighborhood all the time. People who are making sure that that person is okay. We're not talking about the issues they're going through, but just making sure that they're seen, that we're talking to them and we're looking at them in the eye with respect. We also have a homeless population where I live, and while we may not always know their name, we're like, oh, that's Red, because Red always wears red. And we're looking out for them and we're making sure that they're okay.
Wonderful. We're so grateful you came.
Well, you have $4,100 to donate today. Where would you like that to go and why?
I believe goodness is everywhere. It's in every one of you. It's around every corner that you go. You ready to radiate goodness today? Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Please come and see my friend Josephani next month. Seize the day.